Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Live here, and today we're reviewing for you Trombone Champ on the Nintendo Switch. This review was originally written by the wonderful Roland Ingram, and it's been adapted for video by me. And quite uniquely, and for the first time ever, the music that you will hear in the background of this review is all performed by me. Enjoy that. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. The 17th century German rationalist philosopher Gottfried Wilhelm von Leibniz wrote that perfection is the harmony of things. And if that's the case, then our discordant barping in Trombone Champ is far from perfect, despite the multipliers received when maxing out our champ gauge. But you don't need to achieve perfection to enjoy Trombone Champ, you just have to strive for it. Having been discovered on Steam as a rich seam of irresistible meme material in 2022, the zany brass sim from Holy WoW has most probably crossed your radar at some point. Now, almost exactly a year after its PC release, Switch owners have been blessed with their very own version, shadow dropped alongside a surprise reveal in the recent Nintendo Direct. Gameplay, in case you're unfamiliar, is different from a lot of rhythm action fare in that you must work on both pitch and timing. Your instrument being a trombone, the pitch is modulated with a slide and the rhythm input from a single tooting button. This means that you actually have a free-moving cursor that must be aligned to incoming notes on the screen, making precise intonation, at the very least, a finicky business. What's more, the PC version's mouse has been swapped for the lovely Joy-Con motion control, lending even less fidelity to your commands. The upshot of the whole setup is that your playing is unlikely to sound even slightly professional, even after hours of practice. There is a choice of 4 different input methods, but not one of them gives an easy ride. The default is to hold one Joy-Con and tilt it with your wrist to move the trombone slide, operating the mouth and lungs by pressing any one of the 4 shoulder buttons across the 2 Joy-Con. Or just one. If you do use 2, that means you can parp with your left hand and slide with your right as we preferred, or work entirely with one hand. Another tilting option is designed for swinging the whole arm up and down, which is funny for its desperate stretching to reach the low notes when the calibration gets out of whack. A further option is the practically impossible thumbstick control, and finally there's the infrared option, in which the right Joy-Con measures its rarely used reflected light to judge its distance from something. It can be your hand, it can be the table might be easier. All of these options are undeniably silly, and although the default mode is clearly the one to stick with, not a single one gets around the sheer impossibility of playing smoothly. But this doomed control scheme is absolutely fine for 2 reasons. Firstly, the rating of your toots is exactly lenient enough. It has the required strictness to make the game fun and challenging, but will happily dish out a perfecto for a note that still sounds more than a little bit wobbly. Secondly, the inaccuracy of your performance is nonetheless precisely hilarious every flipping time. As the comedian Stuart Lee once said, there's nothing funnier than trying to do your best, and Trombone Champ bears that out. Holy WoW lean into this fact gloriously with their recognizable despite everything catalogue of mainly public domain music and arrangements that know when to expose the trombone for wince-inducing solos. Painfully howling out Star-Spangled Banner as fireworks explode triumphantly against a backdrop of hamburgers and fluttering flags just never gets old. And if this all sounds a little bit chaotic, there's multiplayer. For the Switch release, Trombone Champ allows up to 4 quote-unquote musicians to co-serenade anyone unfortunate enough to be within earshot, or with the subtlety and expression of a primary school recorder ensemble. Each player has a slide and all try to play the same part as in single player. And we soon discovered that when it comes to playing in tune, 4 wrongs do not make a right. In fact, they make things very much less right. Everything about the experience is multiplied. The difficulty of playing in tune with one another in the backing track, the cacophony of your best efforts, but also the thrill of not actually sounding all that terrible for up to 10 seconds. The brief moments when listeners can take their fingers out of their ears are an absolute rush. It's an additional angle on what is already great party game fodder. All this wild gameplay is wrapped up in a neat parcel of balmy presentation. The game immediately loads into a 50-50 split between Castlevania-esque gothic imagery and WarioWare-esque explosive craziness. It then launches into frankly absurd trombone lore focused entirely around baboons. You'll also get facts whenever the game is doing loadment, which are of dubious accuracy. One range of unlockables, such as new trombone sounds, is obtained by gathering points, which are known as toots, and trading them with a baboon. Another option is to use your toots or an alternative currency of turds to buy trading cards featuring famous musicians and different types of baboon, replete with brief biographical facts, typically declaring how many hot dogs Beethoven et al. Could eat in a single sitting. Trombone Champ is a game about perfection. Before you play, it asks you to select a stance for your tromboner, studious or jubilant. Neither of these is appropriate when you know that your performance is going to sound like a pair of bagpipes being put in a pneumatic press. The true lesson is perhaps to hold your head up high anyway. In life, as in Trombone Champ, faced as we all are with certain doom, be studious if you like, be jubilant, parp like crazy, and be your very best you, no matter how imperfect that invariably is. You've reached the end of the review. That means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts, and this game's ridiculous. I love it. Every time you think you've got the measure of this game, it does something else to surprise you. You know, I've found, you know, the baboon. You knock on the door, you get the baboon out, you trade a load of toots with him, and you sort of think, okay, this is how I unlock stuff. And then after a while, he just stops. It just stops working. It just stops working. And the game doesn't tell you anything, it just gives you a blue key and he's like, oh, I have a feeling your journey isn't over yet. And I don't want to spoil anything, but the game's really obscure with what you've got to do. But not so obscure that if you're paying attention, you can't work it out. You could look it up if you like, but you can work it out yourself as well. It's a really difficult balance to get, and maybe it's just for me, but I feel like they've struck it perfectly. After you've done a really bad performance of the entertainer, you feel like you're just scraping by. And then I tried out Gymnopédie #1, and even though I was far from perfect, there were times when it was like, this actually sounds a tiny bit beautiful. And it really threw me for a loop, because it's like, oh, in theory, you can play this well. And believe me, it wasn't perfect, but it sounded far better than I ever expected it to be. The game just really caught me off guard. And then I went through a number of other, like, weird remixes of classical music, and then I was thrown again when I got the funeral piece. It's called Taps in the game. I don't know if that's its actual name. No reason to believe it's not. But it's the very classic American military funeral like piece, and you expect it to go off the rails again and everything, but no, it's like a full 40 seconds long, and it is just the piece, and it's weirdly somber, and the game's just like, yeah, well done, you did quite well. It's what? There's so much going on with this game. It's not like it's actually a really deep game or anything like that, but it's surprisingly deep for something where on the face of it you're just looking at somebody playing the trombone really badly. I did have some issues when it came to the calibration of the motion controls. It seems that it will slip out occasionally, and then, you know, you have to sort of like adjust yourself. You can reset it, but also when playing with 4 people at the same time, you may have seen it in the footage that we featured in the review. I don't know whether it's just because of the positioning of my Switch or what, but it was getting quite choppy with that, so bear that in mind. It's not a massive deal considering what the game is, but it's something to bear in mind. But regardless, this is a weirdly like artistic game. It surprised me at every turn. It was like 10 quid, get it.